speaking of floats, I did float the idea, pun intended. Hello and welcome back to Tinker Swim. My name is Jennifer. I'm a knitter and crocheter from Southern California, where I live with my husband and our 2 cats. It's been about 2 months since my last standard podcast episode. So it feels kind of weird to say this is episode number 5, although it is the 8th video that I've recorded. Today is January 3rd, 2026. If you're viewing this around the time of publication, I wish you a happy new year. And I hope you are having or had wonderful holidays and that the beginning of your year is being good to you. So normally I would be talking about any recently finished objects, but I have none. I will share some new cast-ons and anything that I'm currently working on. And then toward the end, I'll be playing catch up with life lately, what I've been up to. Um, and if any of that interests you, I hope you are cozy, comfy, according to your standards, and that you have a beverage of choice. And if it is available to you, some sort of project that you are working on. All right, let's get into it. And one more thing, of course, I link everything in the description. And if you feel like I get a little rambly sometimes, so please feel free to use the chapters. I put the timestamps and everything in the description, so jump around. You will not hurt my feelings any. It's been almost 2 months, so there's quite a bit that's been going on, and yet not much at all because the holidays are this weird magical time where nothing we all kind of exist outside of traditional time and space. In December, I intentionally did not finish anything. I went through, at least for me, I went through a pretty fast pace or dense completion rate that I'm not normally used to or aspire to. So I intentionally really slowed down in December and didn't expect to finish anything. And sure enough, I did not finish anything. I did, however, go on a little bit of a cast-on party in the, I think, mid-November, early December timeframe. So a couple of new projects that I started include, the first one is Agrippa. Uh, the designer is Audrey Borrego, also known as Yarn Flakes. If you're new here, I'm knitting a lot of her patterns because I like a lot of them, and they are also, she made them all available for free. So in my indecisiveness, I just have a ton of her designs in my queue. So Agrippa was one of the first sock patterns of hers that really caught my eye, and for whatever reason, I just never cast it on. Actually, that's not true. I did cast it on for the very first time sometime in the summer of 2025. However, the yarn choice and my comfort level with the way that the cuff is made, I just ripped it all out. So I didn't let myself try it again until around December. So this is a lace sock, and it starts off with this really cute frilly, I don't know if you would call it frilly or lace, or it has a scalloped, maybe that's the term, a scalloped cuff. And that's done by casting on a certain number of stitches, and then I think it's a series of like, oh darn, since it's been about a month since since I started it, I don't actually remember the actual structure of it. I know it's either like a decrease or an increase plus yarn overs, and then you have to fold the cuff in half and then knit it together with the cast on edge. So which was the hardest part and the part that I'm kind of focusing on in my mind, which it was driving me nuts the first time that I made the sock because I ended up making everything slanted because for me, I still consider myself a beginner-ish, at least in this regard, being able to tell which are the corresponding stitches with my current row versus the cast-on edge. And when I say you have to knit it together, you have to like insert as if you're going to knit through the current row, but then also insert the needle through the the, the stitch of the cast on row. It's fascinating. Um, but regardless, I got I got the first sock going, and this sock is introducing some new concepts to me, including knit 3 together. I'm very familiar with knit 2 together and SSK, but this is the first time that I'm doing 3 to 1 like decreases. So knit 3 together and SSSK. Those are 2 new concepts to me. Um, but yeah, the original pattern is depicted in this beautiful kind of, I want to say cerulean blue, like it's a beautiful, bright, saturated um, blue, greenish, leaning greenish. So I wanted So my first attempt at this sock was with a dark gray, and it just wasn't speaking to me in the same way as when I first saw Agrippa. So I found this yarn when I went to my local yarn store a couple months ago, or sometime maybe last year, and the colorway is called Mojito. The yarn dyer is Bird Street Yarn. They're based in the UK. But I believe my local yarn store is one of the only ones that stock them here in the US. It's this nice almost lime green, but not super like neon. I don't know. It's very it's not my typical color. I do lean like deep, dark, kind of moody, saturated, cool colors. So but I was just really excited to use this yarn. I also got a variegated color that I think would go really well for it. So I have a lot of plans for this yarn. I think it's a combination of superwash merino and nylon, probably somewhere, I think 75-25. Yeah, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. The next new cast on is a Musselburgh. So, if you had watched my year in review, you would know that I made kind of a half a Musselburgh. And if you were interested in the follow up on whether or not it worked out, if I like washed it and managed to wear it as a normal hat, still pending. I did wash it, I did put it on, but the because of the cast off edge, it's a little bit tight around my head. Maybe I have a big head, but also the standard cast off or bind off is not as elastic as I would prefer a hat like cast off to be. Um, Anywho, that didn't deter me from making another Musselburgh though, and this is actually because my husband found a joy in making them, and I kind of got some FOMO of like, darn, I don't have a whole Musselburgh of my own to wear. The designer is Isolde Teague. I'm using leftover yarn from Expression Fiber Arts Mirage Sport from when I made my multivalence blanket. Uh, there are 2 colorways that I got from a set that look really similar to me, so I haven't actually decided if I'm going to make the hat entirely in these 2 colors, if that's going to drive me nuts, like the very slight tonal like difference, or if I'm going to do a gold and red kind of situation. But yeah, the hat is coming together. I think I'm almost about at the point where I would do the contrast brim. So I have to make that decision soon, but soon-ish relatively to when I get there. I'm knitting them on 3.5 millimeter needles. I realize I never say what needle size I'm using, but all of that is in my project notes. I think I if you are ever curious, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy um, to answer. My next new cast on is not knitting. It's not crochet. It's not Tunisian crochet either. It's embroidery. So I have wanted to try a little bit of embroidery ever since I watched one episode of Fruity Knitting. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's a highly structured, I don't even know if you would call it a podcast. It's a show. It's a knitting YouTube show. They part of their format is that they interview uh, artisans, designers, crafts people who are in the fiber arts community about what they make or what they do and design and their philosophies behind everything. It's very interesting. So at one point and I'm so sorry I don't have the person's name written down or the book, but I will link it in the description. Um, at one point they interviewed somebody who has a book on embroidering your knits, and the she did a tutorial on the show, and it was just really fun to watch and really interesting. When I went to the SoCal Fiber Fair in 2025 a couple months ago, I had told my husband I was interested in picking up an embroidery kit. We both tried to make a plan for ahead of time for what we intended to purchase so that we would kind of have a better guideline for not spending an exorbitant amount of money. Um, and on our way out, we saw the booth for Jamie Photo, who makes a lot of embroidery kits. And so one that stood out to us was a D&D one with a D20 in the center. If you're not a D&D person, Dungeons and Dragons, a D20 is a 20-sided die. So that's usually synonymous with the tabletop role playing scene, particularly Dungeons and Dragons. Um, so it's this beautiful like floral design with a D20 in the center. Mine isn't so beautiful. It is a beginner piece, so please be kind. I so far I enjoy it, except I find that the numbers are a pain in the butt. So I guess you have to use something called a stem stitch to do it, or at least she prescribes a stem stitch for the curvature of the numbers. And that's just something that I'm gonna have to practice a little bit more. I ripped it out and redid it. I don't know the correct terminology for anything embroidery, so I don't know if it's the correct way to say I ripped it out. Um, or even if I should have, because I don't know, with all the holes in the fabric, like I was really nervous about doing that, but I couldn't live with it the first iteration of the 20. So I redid it and it's less hideous. And yeah, so that's something, I find it soothing and kind of melodic or methodic meditative is the word, one of the M words. And I do actually like to embroider on it when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. So those are all my new projects. Transitioning right into whips or works in progress. Um, I lost the bet with my husband. He said I was incapable of doing a vanilla sock. And I said, you're probably right, but I'm going to give it a good college try. And yeah, well, I turned it into Little People socks, also designed by Audrey Borrego, known as Yarn Flakes. I have made a pair before. They are a textured sock, alternating rows of knitting and slipping stitches and knitting and purling stitches, which looks, in my opinion, really nice on variegated yarn. Um, yeah, I don't think I made it very far. I think I just finished the ribbing on the cuff and then I decided I'm not doing a vanilla sock. Even more so, I finished the heel and then for whatever reason I just lost all motivation. I may suffer from the like only make a design one time syndrome. I know some people like never knit something twice. Um, I don't know if I'm that category of maker yet, but I do know that I didn't really have a lot of motivation to work on it. But I do kind of want these socks because I don't know, call me cheesy. I think it would be cute to have sort of matching socks, yarn wise anyway, with my husband, because he has a pair that he made for himself, vanilla. So I actually, and he was in a lull between projects, so I actually pawned it off on my husband to ask him if he wanted to make the rest of the socks for me. And he made 2 rows, so that was cool. I did have to give him the instructions for everything, and I didn't mention that, like, the bottom of the foot doesn't have the texture. So 1 row exactly has the texture on it, and I don't think that'll bother me much, but I'm not gonna go back and fix it. It'll be fine. The yarn, I did mention this before, it's Bird Street Yarn, so the same company as, the yarn or the same yarn dyer as the yarn I'm using for Agrippa. And the colorway is Kestrel. It's modeled after a bird, and I think it was made exclusively for my local yarn store. For my next whip is Boudoir, also designed by Audrey Borrego, known as Yarn Flakes. There is a theme here, I know. Um, and this has been on my needles for a little while, since midsummer last year. I did make a decent amount of progress, according to me, because it was just this little kind of triangle for a long time, but now it's long enough to kind of fold over itself when I'm working on it, which is awesome because the vision is coming together, but also it makes it a little bit more unwieldy when working. It's really satisfying, and it can be addictive as long as I can get in the motivation zone to even work on it. Because sometimes mentally, I create this block for myself of like, well, there's 3 colors attached to it. I'm not a stranger to working with 3 colors, but it is a little bit difficult to kind of get out of the bag, to get everything set up and lined up, make sure that the yarn isn't all tangled together, and then start working on it. But I'm almost done with the increase portion. And after the increase portion, I'm about halfway through, and then I start the decreases. So I imagine it'll feel like it's moving faster after I get over this last set of, I think it's something like 48 or 49 rows for each repeat of the increase section. The yarn is Dream in Color in their lamb and goat base. And the three colorways, I think plum, one might be called Coal, and then one is called Lilac. I purchased it from the SoCal Fiber Fair in a kit in 2023, and it was part of a different type of cowl kit, and I lost the pattern for the cowl, and I went with this boudoir pattern to use these three colors together. And finally, my last work in progress is the one that is taking up most of my time and attention and interest. It's the Ghali Sweater, designed by Janet of Zanet Knits. And the yarn that I'm using for it is purchased from Good Yarn Co. up in Portland. I'm using 6 cones of yarn. Um, 3 of them are associated with the green color, so 2 strands of cashvip, so there's a merino and cashmere blend, with frizzanti, which is a shiny lurex. And then the other color, the main color, the light gray, is ashen fleece, or 2 strands of that mixed with a shiny yarn of that matching color. I'm not being super accurate with the colors or yarn at the present moment, mainly because I have mentioned this several times, at least in my previous episodes. And my notes are very minimal right now. However, again, everything is listed out in my projects, and feel free to ask me if you want more information. But I know Cashvip is the main fiber that I'm working with, and Lurex is also known, or the brand mill name is Frizzanti. And yeah, I got them all from Good Yarn Co. I do think that the difficulty of this is being increased by my choice of holding so many strands together, but particularly using that shiny strand of Lurex, because the way that it grips onto things, I had to adjust the strands a lot. Now that I've worked through a good portion of the sweater, I think the last time I showed it on the podcast, I had just done a few rows after the cast-on. And so I have since split for sleeves, and I'm almost done with the color work portion of the body. And by almost done, I mean I have like 30 rows left, 25 rows left-ish of the chart for the body. After that, I will be going into a solid section. And I do think it'll get easier, of course, because I will be working with half the number of strands, and also less lurex. Because the lurex tends to because it's not as dense as the rest of the yarn, and because I think it's a lot stickier than the merino and cashmere. It just gets stuck on things. It gets stuck on itself. It gets kind of looped around multiple times, or there will be a section that is correctly wrapped around one portion of the other yarn, and then it'll just bow out and then come back. So I'll have to run my fingers across the strand to straighten it out on a regular basis. And then sometimes they get wrapped up in each other, especially if I'm doing a round that involves a lot of catching floats. Speaking of floats, I did float the idea, pun intended, of doing ladder back jacquard for the current section that I'm on. So the sweater is intended and designed to look like a veil that's lifting over the main color, or lifting off of the main color. You start off with more of the contrast color, which in my case is the dark green, and then you move down the motif, and the motif is the same theme and design, but the color density changes to show more of the main color, which is the light gray. So at the bottom, the floral components of it are pre- pretty big, solid blocks of color. However, when looking at the chart, I had actually started preparing to do ladder back jacquard for these sections, but because of the way that the stitches are kind of staggered to create this image, I figured it isn't as consistent of a solid mass for me to do ladder back jacquard. So I actually undid those, and I went ahead and just did regular float catching. And so hopefully that will continue to work out. I have made several mistakes otherwise on my journey with the sweater, but most of them I've been able to either fix or decide that I can live with. Um, and I'm really happily moving along, and it's moving faster, especially after the sleeve separation, of course, because I'm not doing any more increases and things like that. And yeah, so I don't know when I'll be done with it. Again, I'll talk about in a second of my hands being injured. That's actually the most frustrating part about having to pause on it is that I got to a place where it was just so fluid and such a joy to work on, and maybe that is why I got injured. But again, still really excited about it. Looking forward to it. Okay, so that wraps up my project overview. If that is all you cared about, feel free to sign off or click on to the next one. I hope you have a wonderful day and thank you again for joining me. I'm going to move on into talking about what I've been up to lately. Yeah, and then we'll close out from there. So, first and foremost, all the bad stuff. So I finished my year in review series in the nick of time because I got sick shortly afterward. So that really cut down on my physical ability to do a regular podcast episode. I was going to wait until, or I did wait until I was a lot better, which took quite a while. Every time I get sick, there is a lingering cough. So it's a blend from asthma and all that good stuff. Um, so so it was a really sketchy moment of like, I think I'm done being sick, but I'm still hacking up a lung, and I'm not sure if it's allergies or just me. It's like the price is right, but with illness. Right after, well, since I was sick and I couldn't do much in terms of like existing as a human outside the home. I took up knitting a lot, so that's where a lot of my progress on the Ghali sweater got done. I was starting to even measure like how much progress I was making per week or even per day to estimate when I would be done with the body of the sweater. So when I get really into things like this, I like numbers, I like the data. Um, and then after I did my last fit check, I was putting everything back on the regular needles because I have try-on cords that I connect to it. So I was putting everything back on my regular needles, and I was literally just gonna go right back into working on my galley sweater. I did maybe 3 stitches, and I had this shooting pain in my left hand. It kinda knocked me out for the rest of the day in terms of just using my hand for much, because I was then not really even able to like hold normal things or like grip normal things because then it would be this shooting pain. So the last time that I hurt myself, I only took a day or two off and I got right back to it. So this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and very seriously take a break. Do the whole rice method, rest, ice, compression, elevate, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So it was no knitting for several days. I want to say almost a full week or so. And maybe I could benefit from continuous resting. I do intend to still stay off of it for the most part for the next like week or even 2 weeks, depending on how I feel. Because again, I do work at a desk and I do meal prepping and stuff like that. So I'm still using my hands and I need my hands to do my work and to also do all the things that I normally do. So the hobby of knitting has to take a little bit of a backseat. Having said that, on the bright side, I did pick it up to try it out, to try how it feels yesterday or 2 days ago. Um, so I started with the Musselburgh hat, just a smidge, just to see how plain stockinette, no color work or anything, felt, and it was my hands are stiff, but it went well. And then yesterday, I did a couple rounds of the Ghali sweater. I think I did maybe 45 minutes, and then I took about an hour break, and then I did maybe 30, 45 minutes more, and then called it a day after that. I was doing a lot in the kitchen, though, yesterday. Yesterday, I don't know, I had this huge motivation to magically better my life in all the ways. I worked out, which actually worked really fine. So again, it sometimes is you just psych yourself out. I don't know if anybody else relates, but yeah, so I ended up doing a workout, and then I had this whole thing to make chicken noodle soup for meal prepping, and whatever possessed me to also make an apple pie because physical fitness and apple pie go together, right? What else have I been up to? So, I mean, being injured and sick, so not able to knit, I've been up to a lot of other things, um, sort of. So I went back into journaling. If you're into journaling, maybe you're familiar with it. But Hobonichi Techo is a Japanese brand, and they have planners. I think they're only planners, so like with dates and everything. I think some of them are undated. They have different types and formats. But what really is special about these is the type of paper. So it's like a special kind of like Japanese river paper or something like that. It's really nice. It's a nice tactile feeling. And I had purchased the Techo. I've used the Weeks version, which is a slim travel size weekly planner. I've used them for a couple years now, and I really like them. So I wanted to use the original format, which is a small. I didn't realize how small, like maybe as tall as my mic holder, aka crochet hook. Um, and it's got just a different kind of like physical shape or format and a lot more pages than the weeks one. So, but the date starts in January 2026 because they're for each year. So I had to wait several months to actually start using it. So I started actually writing in it. I do my daily gratitudes, and also trying to figure out a plan for it because I have multiple journals. So I have a big dot grid journal from Archer and Olive, which I've had for a little while now. So I use that for more of my long form journaling and bullet journaling, where I create my own spreads. I set up a bingo card for this month of the different goals that I want to go through, including creative goals and also household maintenance goals, fitness goals, all that good stuff. And I'll be awarding myself, different things for getting bingos. So if I get a blackout bingo this month, I get to buy a sweater quantity of yarn. So wish me luck on that. I'm gonna have to be doing so much for that, but but I like to turn my goals into games, so it's motivating for me. I also would like to use it as a commonplace book. So if you're not familiar with a commonplace book, it's a new-ish concept to me that maybe I've known for like 2 or 3 years. I haven't successfully completed like a whole book, but a commonplace book is basically where you jot down concepts that you're learning or vocabulary or just things that you're studying or curious about, um, to kind of have this reference point. And I think the concept is inspired or can be equated to like the journals of Da Vinci. Um, so if you're doing like art studies or botany studies or anything that interests you in general, you would just kind of have this place to write it down and you would create an index in the front so that you can easily reference where you write this down. Why wouldn't I do all of this in some sort of online app? That is because of another project that I'm doing called, oh my goodness, what is it called? It's the Analog Life Project by Little Truth Studios. So, Lori, who runs Little Truth Studios, this just came up in my Instagram feed randomly, and it hit me at a time where I was really feeling the need to do something like this of a return to analog life. And I do think that there does seem to be a trend moving back towards the physical things and what is really physically around us with intention. And in other words, an analog life. And what does that mean? Like more than the nostalgia of like the 90s or the 80s with VCRs, videotapes, and like film cameras as opposed to digital. Um, but also a connection with the tangible spaces around us, like libraries, museums. I wouldn't say I'm chronically online, but I do tend to enjoy doing stuff like that, like going out and kind of exploring the different facilities around me and cultural exhibits and things like that. But I haven't been. much lately. And it may be a residual effect of the pandemic with everything closed down and just cutting that kind of part out of your life for so long. And it's like a slow homecoming, I guess, to things that are interesting to you that are outside of a screen. So it is partially to reduce online screen time. And I am aware of the irony that I'm recording a podcast and will be editing this and all that good stuff. But outside of that, just spending more time with things that are have more of that physical, tangible reality for me. And I think that relates beautifully with knitting and crocheting and all the handcrafts and fiber arts that we do. I think we're already one foot in the door, if not both feet in the door with that, because I know a lot of people who knit and crochet also enjoy, a warm beverage, whether that's coffee, tea, um, and the feeling of blankets around you and all that. These are all things that can be taken for granted when you're, stuck on scrolling zone. So that's an interesting concept that I'm looking into. I'm not making a New Year's resolution or anything. That's something my philosophy with New Year's resolutions has been that if it's worthwhile to do, then do it. To begin is a quote from William Wordsworth that I really like. Is that I shouldn't For me, I don't want to wait until a certain date to do something to better myself if I can just begin. And that's not knocking anybody who does New Year's resolutions. It's all about what motivates you. So if a date or the overall that that momentous feeling of the transition of the calendar motivates you, then that's beautiful. For me, it feels like I'm being almost held back because I usually get those feelings for change somewhere in November or December. And to wait until January 1st for me it feels restrictive rather than motivating or like the anticipatory. So yeah, so that's kind of how that's what I'm up to for myself. And what else? Fun stuff, things that I'm watching, reading, playing. Um, my husband and I are reading through the Dresden Files. So I have mixed feelings about this book series. I really enjoy it, first and foremost. Um, it's in the Dresden Files, for those who are unfamiliar, if you like fantasy, a contemporary fantasy, it's about an adult wizard in Chicago who's kind of a private investigator. Um, and I like to we like to describe him as basically he's such a loser. He's the most unfortunate person in the world. But he's a wizard and there's a whole world building sense around it and like how magic works and how supernatural forces work that I really enjoy. Jim Butcher is the author. I think his world building is fantastic. And I'm probably biased because sometimes I'm reading this and I'm like, "Oh, he definitely plays Dungeons& and Dragons." Like, "Oh, he definitely plays these video games that, like, I've played." So, I guess I am biased because 'cause I'm like, "This is very familiar to me," and also therefore believable because I already subscribe to these types of fantasy structures. So that's cool. I think Jim Butcher does this on purpose, but the character of Harry Dresden, who is the main character, he has tendencies to think or do things that make me go, excuse my language, but occasionally this character does things that just makes me go, "This fucking guy," and or there are moments of like, okay, of course this character has to follow this stereotype. What else is going to happen? So there are moments where I'm a little bit frustrated by I don't know if it's the writing or the character, but I do think the writing itself is over time because I think it is his first series. So now we're in book 6. The title is Blood Rights. So it's like there's a bunch of books in this series, and I think there are also like side quests too. So we're kind of at this point where he's kind of found his author voice, and it flows really nicely. The story is very engaging, so I do want to see how it's going, and I know it's a very popular series and stuff. Um, so yeah, really enjoying that. And I've also been playing a lot of video games because apparently, when my hands are injured, I think it's okay to play video games. Um, but I started playing World of Warcraft again recently. So if you're unfamiliar with that, that's a 20-plus-year-old video game. I played it on and off from the dawn of its existence. Um, I was one of those crappy 12-year-olds or 10-year-olds. I think I was 12 when it came out. 2004. Might have been closer to 13. So, yeah. So it's still going, and there's a new expansion coming out in March, and they released player housing. So, or they did early release of player housing, which is where you get to live in, you get to build your own little house. It's kind of like The Sims, but thrown into the World of Warcraft universe or an RPG, MMORPG universe. And I've been having a ball with that. And there's also something called Legion Remix that's currently happening, where you kind of go back in time to old content and speed run through it. So my husband and I have been uh, playing a lot of that when there's downtime. There's another video game that I started playing. There was a Steam winter sale. So in my no knitting week, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get 2 Point Museum. Lately, I have gravitated towards cozy simulator village life kind of games. I own 2 Point Hospital, but I found the gameplay a little bit too close to mobile games that are very like, I don't know what it is. I don't like video games on phones or mobile games. With the like you travel across a map and each one you have to do some sort of objective and then there's like a 3-star rating or something. So I should have known that that's what it was, but I didn't really enjoy 2 Point Hospital. But the reviews were so good for 2 Point Museum that I was like, maybe I want to give it a shot. The trailer was really, really funny. I enjoyed it has a really sarcastic narration style, and it's just a goofy game. So you play as a museum curator, and and you help revitalize certain scenes. And what I didn't expect was I went in blind, so I saw a lot of great reviews, but you know, overall sentiments. So I didn't know the actual content of the game, and going in blind, it was just great fun. There's just so many different aspects of museum curation that I, as somebody who knows nothing about museum curation, am just really deeply enjoying. Different types of exhibits that you can cater to, different aspects of the management simulation uh, category that feel very refreshing. Like staff management is a thing, but also like the acquisition of new exhibits to display in the museum, that is a whole mechanic that I wasn't really expecting, and it kinda makes it kind of a more like adventurous feeling type of game, and it can also be cozy if I just relax and not succumb to my typical feelings of, like, I gotta finish all the objectives right away, and it's also really just fun to watch the characters, the little, computer-generated characters, because they're different types of visitors even, and they all behave in certain ways, they interact with the exhibits in certain ways, so that was a lot of fun. That I think I played for like 22 hours the first weekend that I got it. It was a long weekend. I think I got it on I was off the week of Christmas, so I think I got it the Friday after Christmas and over the next like 3 days, or over the, through Sunday. It's like a 22-hour playtime. So yeah, um, that's what I've been up to, and circling all the way back to knitting, I'm just really happy to be getting back into it. I only watch knitting podcasts when I'm knitting because it's just kind of the ambiance that I like feeling like I'm sitting and having a stitch and bitch session with friends. So I'm so happy to be catching up with everybody in the knitting community. I also appreciate the well wishes on my Instagram when I said my hands were hurting and stuff. People checking in with me. So thank you so much for being so kind. And it's been really nice, begrudgingly, to see everybody's holiday makes. A little bit of FOMO because I was like, oh, I'm not making any gifts and things like that. But it was really nice, and yeah, this community has been a joy to be a part of. I actually watch a ton of knitting podcasts, and there are a lot of times where I'm like, should I name everybody who I watch? Um, because I know they all have thousands of subscribers or hundreds of subscribers, And so if anybody is watching me, they probably already know the existence of anybody else that I'm watching. And then also I wanna be fair that if I forget anybody, I would feel horrible. I would need to do it in a more, like, formulaic way. If that's actually something that you'd be interested in, like a podcast or recommendation roundup, let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to do it if that's something that interests you. But I will list quite a handful, and I do apologize if I forget anybody. If you made it this far, I appreciate you so much for sitting here with me and hanging out, and I hope you got some decent progress done on your project if you were working on one. Um, I will resume my roughly bi-weekly schedule from here. I don't know when I'll be uploading this because I do have some editing to do. So maybe it might be out on Monday, the 5th of January, unless I just hyper focus and edit it all today. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day whenever you are watching this, and I will see you again soon.